Appeal court clears the coast for federal government to open its case against suspended Chief Justice Walter Onnoghen. Anambra trader conceals tramadol substance in 5 bags of Gary. In international news, Venezuela detains 5 foreign journalists covering standoff with opposition forces. And in sports, Nigeria female beach volleyball team ranked 2nd in Africa.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The case of the suspended Chief Justice of Nigeria, Walter Onnoghen, seems to have taken a new dimension as the Abuja Division of the Court of Appeal has given a nod to the federal government to go ahead with the case at the Code of Conduct Tribunal. The appellate court, in a unanimous ruling by a 3-man panel, declined to stop further proceedings in the 6-count charge the federal government referred against Onnoghen. The Code of Conduct Tribunal had earlier adjourned hearing of the matter indefinitely to await the appeal court ruling. The appeal court ordered the CCT to debunk rumors that names of dead were on the list of the 250 judges sworn in as chairman and members of the 2019 Elections Petition Tribunal by acting Chief Justice Tanko Muhammad. The court says the reports are false and that the list was drawn with input from state chief judges and the Nigerian Bar Association. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has released the final list of governorship and state assembly candidates. The governorship, state assembly, and FCT area council elections are scheduled for March the 2nd. There are 1,066 candidates for the governorship elections, 14,583 for the state assembly elections, and 806 for the FCT area council elections. The National Broadcasting Commission is warning television and radio stations in the country against entertaining hate speeches and picking from social media on unofficial results of the forthcoming elections. Director General of the Commission, Ishaq Kawo, gave the warning on behalf of the federal government at a press conference in Abuja. Kawo says INEC remains the only official source of election results and that any television or radio station found wanting would be sanctioned. The Embassy Director General says sanctions and fines letters have already been sent to 4 television stations who have violated the hate speech regulation.
Contrary to certain sections of the Nigeria Broadcasting Code, 525, 533, 525 says political broadcast shall be in decent language, and 533 says a live coverage shall be truthful, decent, fair, and balanced.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has filed a 10-count corruption charge against former Secretary to the federal government, Al-Bashir. Lawal was removed from office after being indicted by a Senate committee which investigated the management of money for internally displaced persons. He was said to have used those companies to get contracts worth millions of naira without executing them. A separate charge was also filed against Ayodele Oke, former head of the Nigerian Intelligence Agency, who was removed from office after millions of dollars belonging to the agency was found in his apartment. The accused persons have appeared before High Court of the Federal Capital Territory. After spending 1.5 years negotiating with financiers for the revamping of Nigeria's refineries, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation says it could not agree with investors on the commercial terms of the transaction. Port Harcourt Refining Company has 2 refineries. The other 2 companies are the Warri Refining and Petrochemical Company and the Kaduna Refining and Petrochemical Company. The refineries have an installed capacity of more than 445,000 barrels per day, but for years have performed below capacity. A three-man United States Transportation Security Administration team is in Nigeria to begin routine assessment of the Murtala Muhammad International Airport. The Transportation Security Administration is an agency of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. NCAA says the team's visit is to observe the implementation of aviation security measures and to ensure recommended TSA security procedures are being followed. The Lagos Access Bank International Marathon takes place this weekend, so the Federal Road Safety Corps is restricting movements of trailers, tankers and other articulated vehicles in the city during the next 2 consecutive weekends, Friday the 1st and 2nd and February the 8th and 9th. This decision was reached at the end of a meeting of heads of security and traffic management agencies in the state. FRSC Lagos Sector Commander Eugenia Someje has urged drivers to comply with the new directive of face penalties. Omeje says traffic advisory has been given and alternative routes have been communicated. Total closure of the 3rd mainland bridge will be from dawn to mid-afternoon on each day of the race. An Onitsha-based trader has allegedly abandoned a cargo suspected to be tramadol concealed in 5 bags of gari. NAFDAC Director General Professor Moji Adeyeye announced this at the inauguration of the NAFDAC Youth Against Drug Abuse Awareness Campaign in Anambra State. Adeyeye says the bags were seized as the owner ran away when he saw NAFDAC officers. Coming up, African stories, Djibouti boat accident death toll rises. And later, international news, Venezuela detains foreign journalists.
You are watching ANN.
If you know fit go internet or follow for Twitter, you know fit snap photo send or get it photo send. Now because you dey use Palasa, your phone no dey answer. See me see wahala. My brother, go get smartphone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no go for your hand, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no fit take selfie. Drop that Palasa phone. No be correct phone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone.
Upgrade to a smartphone today and get double data for 6 months on any MTN data bundle you buy. Simply purchase a smartphone from any store, anywhere in Nigeria, or bring your current smartphone from any network. Insert your MTN SIM card to start enjoying your double data bonus. Offer is open to all new and existing MTN subscribers. Join the largest smartphone movement today.
Make it known for your hand, that's Palasa phone.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to African stories. The UN Migration Agency said on Wednesday the death toll from the 2 migrant boats that sank off the coast of Godoria, Djibouti, has risen to 56, and more than 100 bodies are still missing. IOM Chief of Mission in Djibouti, Lalini Verazami, says the overcrowded boats carrying mostly Ethiopians have set sail on rough seas and capsized shortly after departing Djibouti. He further said that tragic events demonstrates the risk that vulnerable migrants face as they innocently search for better lives. 16 persons are said to have been found alive, while search and rescue for survivors continue. Thousands of migrants from the region boat from Djibouti each year, hoping to cross to the Arabian Peninsula in search of better jobs and living conditions. South Africa's largest labor union said on Wednesday it will stage a nationwide strike in February over large-scale layoffs at state-owned firms and private companies. Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU Group, with more than 1.5 million members, says threats of deeper job cuts at state power firm Eskom, public broadcaster SABC, as well as other government plans to squeeze headcounts, had prompted the decision for a nationwide strike. Eskom has announced plans to shed around 7,000 workers over the next 5 years. State broadcaster says it would lay off around 1,000 permanent employees. Numerous mining firms also plan massive layoffs. The union's spokesman, Sizwe Pamela, said they had had a deadlock deliberation with the government and private sector on the issue of retrenchments, but from the outcome, it had no option but to apply for the strike. COSATU represents workers across mining, manufacturing, finance, and the public sectors. Lecturers and professors at the University of Khartoum in the Sudan have called for further anti-government protests. More than 300 academics of the Sudan's oldest and most respected education institution held a sit-in protest on campus against President Al-Bashir's government on Wednesday. The lecturers have also published online a document calling for the peaceful transfer of power. A spokesman, Mamdouh Hassan, says at least 531 staff members had signed and listed several demands. They want the formation of a transitional government as they declared President Bashir unfit to rule the country. More than a month-long countrywide protests against the president have been marred by violence and arrest. Officials say 30 persons have been killed, but right groups put the number at 40. Demonstrators have vowed protests would continue because the underlying political and economic problems had not been resolved. A Zimbabwe official says the public sector union has backed down from its plans to begin a nationwide strike because the volatile situation in the country after this month's violent protests were met by a brutal security crackdown. On Wednesday, wage negotiations broke down between the government and 17 public sector unions, who then met to decide a date for a strike this week. But the talks ended in disarray, forcing the union to decide against the strike. The union says the decision was necessary to avoid tense and polarized situation that may be hijacked for unrelated issues with labor. Ethiopia has opened the biggest airport aviation hub in Africa, newly expanded Addis Ababa Bile International Airport Terminal, with a capacity for up to 22 million passengers a year. The new airport is believed to be larger than Johannesburg OR Tambo International Airport. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed inaugurated the new and biggest China-funded airport project that began construction 4 years ago. The terminal comes equipped with modern amenities, including automated backdrop solutions, e-gates, self-check-in kiosk, baggage handling, and the latest airport security technologies. According to travel intelligence agency Forward Keys, Addis Ababa overtook Dubai last year as a leading gateway to Africa. Ethiopian Airlines is currently implementing a 15-year strategic plan aimed at becoming Africa's leading airline group. The carrier has an operating fleet of more than 100 aircraft and currently flies to more than 100 international passenger and cargo destinations, with more than 60 of those in Africa. Ethiopian Airlines overtook South Africa Airways last year as Africa's largest carrier after it almost doubled its seat capacity in 7 years. Last year, the country announced it would start granting visas on arrival to Africans. The citadel of Salah Eddin, the landmark castle in Cairo, has been decorated with red lights to celebrate China's Xinyuan festival. The decoration of the ancient castle is part of a series of spring festival activities organized by the China Cultural Center in Cairo. It is the first large-scale cultural center set up overseas in the 21st century by the Chinese government. Various Egyptian officials attended the event and celebrated the Little New Year with representatives of diaspora and Chinese in Egypt. With nearly 1,000 years of history, the castle was lit up in red with Chinese red lanterns hanging inside. Artists from China and Egypt also performed symphonies at the event. Shanyan Festival falls on the 23rd or 24th day of the last month of the Chinese traditional lunar calendar, marking the start of the countdown to China's most important festival, the Lunar New Year or Spring Festival. When we return, international news. Venezuela detains foreign journalists covering standoff with opposition forces. And later, sports. Nigeria female beach volleyball team ranked second in Africa. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby.
We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward.
Wait, stop.
You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down. Keep walking to the left. Yes.
You're almost here.
Keep going.
You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In world news, British Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt has warned Brexit could be delayed as the government needs extra time to pass key legislation should the UK leave the EU without a deal. A study has also found that the British government is unprepared for a no-deal Brexit. The minister said a technical delay to Article 50 may be required. The House of Lords handed the Prime Minister a victory vote this week, but sent her back to Brussels to renegotiate a key part of a Brexit deal, which the EU had said cannot be renegotiated. Her original plan was resoundingly rejected by the House of Commons earlier this month. The Parliament's week-long February recess has been cancelled in order to deal with the sheer amount of the Brexit legislation. The cancellation was announced by the Commons leader after her cabinet colleague, Foreign Secretary Hunt, admitted there may have to be a shift in the divorce date with the European Union because Theresa May's government was not prepared for the consequences of leaving the EU without a deal. And at least 5 foreign journalists who were covering the Venezuelan political drama with the U.S. and opposition forces have been detained. Opposition forces backed by the United States have been working on the ouster of President Nicolas Maduro. The detained journalists are from France, Colombia, and Spain. 2 others from Chile were deported as the crisis spreads. The latest disturbance has crippled the nation's economy. U.S. sanctions and Venezuela's frozen assets in the U.S. have compounded the problems of the oil-rich nation. The situation is expected to be very serious once Maduro runs out of cash with no access to funds. The U.S. and some Western and Latin American nations have recognized the opposition leader and National Assembly Speaker Juan Guaido, who declared himself president earlier this month. UN figures show at least 40 have died and more than 800 arrested in protests that started last week against the Maduro government. German authorities have arrested 3 Iraqi refugees on Wednesday on allegations they were planning an Islamic extremist bombing attack. Federal prosecutors said a 23-year-old and a 36-year-old Iraqi citizens were taken into custody in an early morning raid by a police SWAT team in a town near the Denmark border. Head of Germany's federal police, Holger Mensch, said the suspect had German refugee status and had been under surveillance for some time by a task force of around 200 investigators. Prosecutors allege the women decided late last year to carry out an attack in Germany, motivated by Islamic extremism. Many family members of those still missing in the Brazil dam collapse are now resigning to fate that their loved ones might have died. But some have continued digging through the muddy debris of the collapsed dam as it held back mine waste. As search and recovery efforts continued, authorities also worked to still the mud that contained high concentration of iron oxide that it wouldn't contaminate a much larger waterway that provides drinking water to 5 of the country's 26 states. Friday's breach at the Vale mine led to a sea of mud that plastered several areas of the southeastern city of Brumadinho. To date, 96 persons have been confirmed dead and more than 250 are missing. The painfully cold weather system that puts much of mid-western United States into a horrific deep freeze was expected to ease yesterday. But temperatures forecasters say temperatures could still tumble to record lows in some places before the region begins to thaw out. Disruptions caused by the terrible cold will persist as well, including power outages and cancelled flights and trains. Crews in Detroit, Michigan will need days to repair water mains that burst Wednesday, and other pipes can still crack in persistent sub-zero temperatures. This dangerously cold weather has caused schools and business closures and strained infrastructure with some of the lowest temperatures in a generation. National Weather Service has said before the worst of the cold begins to lift, Chicago could hit lows that would break the city's record of minus 32 degrees Celsius set in 1985. Up next, sports. Nigeria female beach volleyball team ranked second in Africa. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
This used to be me. But that was before I got the perfect bag. It's handy and easy to use. All I need in one compact space, just like my MTN Extra Value plan. I used to get one plan for my calls and then try to remember which data plan worked for me. Roaming was a totally different ballgame. Not anymore. I've got the MTN Extra Value all-in-one plan. If you're a data buff like me, you get extra data with some talk time. And if you like to make calls, you get extra talk time with some data. And when I'm abroad, I automatically browse, chat, and call right on the same plan. MTN Extra Value was made just for me.
More of data or calls, whichever one you prefer. MTN Extra Value is made just for you.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sports, Nigeria's women beach volleyball team have retained the second spot in the latest ranking by the African Volleyball Federation. The girls were victorious at the Capital International Beach Volleyball Championship in Cameroon. Musa Nimrod, president of the Nigeria Volleyball Federation, promised the female team would attend more championships this year and also defend their gold medal at the 2019 All-African Games in Morocco. And Super Eagles coach General has promised to invite few Flying Eagles players to the Super Eagles ahead of the AFCON qualifiers clash with Seychelles. The Flying Eagles are currently preparing for the 2019 Under-20 AFCON Cup in Niger. And we surely wish them well. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on this and other stories, visit our website, annafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.